Good morning, fifth grade. So last week we learned that volume is the space inside a three-dimensional figure. And we learned how to calculate the volume of rectangular prisms. If you remember, in order to calculate the volume of a rectangular prism, we have to multiply the three dimensions together. Those three dimensions being length times width times height. So if we take a look at the example rectangular prism, I notice that the length is 3, the width is 2, and the height is 7. So in order to find the volume of this rectangular prism, I would need to multiply 3 times 2 times 7. When I did so, I would get 42 meters cubed. So let's pretend for a moment that I had another identical prism, exactly the same dimensions as this one, and I glued them together. So I could make a shape such as this. Here is my original rectangular prism, and I took another exactly the same rectangular prism and I glued it on right here. So I would need to take the volume of the first rectangular prism, which was 42 meters cubed, and then the volume of the second rectangular prism, which was, since it's the same, would be 42 meters cubed. And I would need to add the two structures together, just like I added them together or glued them together to get a total of 84 meters cubed. Let's take a look at another example. How would we find the volume of this structure? While looking at the structure, I notice that it is made up of two rectangular prisms. I have a large rectangular prism here on the bottom, and I have a smaller rectangular prism on the top. Well, easy way to do it would I would have to decompose it or break it apart. I would pop that top right off, and I would have two rectangular prisms. So I would first have to find the volume of this bottom rectangular prism. If you take a look at the green lines, that gives me the measurements of that bottom rectangular prism. It has a length of 6, a width of 5, and a height of 4 inches. So in order to calculate the volume of that rectangular prism, I would have to do 6 inches times 5 inches times 4 inches, and I would get 120 inches cubed. That is the volume of that large rectangular prism on the bottom. Now I would have to find the volume of the top rectangular prism. Let's take a look at what that would look like. Let's take a look at the red lines. This measurement right here would be my length of 3 inches. This right here would be my width. If you notice, the width of the smaller box is the same as the larger box. It is 5 inches as well, and then a height of 2. So I would have to multiply 3 times 5, which is 15, times 2, which is 30 inches cubed. Lastly, I would have to put the boxes back together. I would have to add together the 120 inches cubed to the 30 inches cubed to come up with the volume of the entire structure, which would be 150 inches cubed. Let's do another one together. Take a look at this example. We're going to break apart and decompose this structure so that we can find the volume. Let's first take a look at the bottom prism. Let's look at the green lines. So if I take a look at this rectangular prism on the bottom, so I'm just kind of popping off the top and only looking at the bottom box, I have a length of 6. I have a width of 2 meters and a height of 2 meters. If I would multiply 6 times 2, I'd get 12 times 2 equals 24. So the bottom box volume would be 24 meters cubed. Now we need to take a look at the volume of the top prism. Let's take a look at the red lines. If I'm taking a look at those red lines, I am noticing these following measurements. This part right here, since the entire way across that top box was a length of 6 centimeters, and this part that I'm not using is 4 centimeters, it means there's 2 left over. which would be that measurement of the length. The width is the same, if you notice, exactly the same for the bottom box and the top box. So it's also a measurement of 2 meters. And finally, the height. Well, if you take a look at the height of the bottom box, it's 2 meters. The whole side is 4 meters. So therefore, the small section would be 2. What's left over is 2. So my measurements for that top rectangular prism would be 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. My measurement would be 8 meters cubed. And lastly, we have to find the volume then of the entire structure, put it back together, the two boxes. So when I put the two boxes back together, I would add 24 meters cubed plus 8 meters cubed for a grand total of 32 meters cubed. And that's how you combine volumes of rectangular prisms.